Welcome into part 2 of episode 16. I'm still Owen Burke. He is still Tim Hunt. We've got a mighty fine betting segment lined out for you folks, all right? I'll tell you what, the boys have kind of been red hot. I've been fucking undeniably hot.
On fire.
Tim's been pretty good still. Pretty
Trying to
solid
recover.
this week.
Yeah.
Pretty solid this week, but we can't get there yet. We got some pump the brakes to do, but you are going to want to hang around for that because I am 9-0 in the last 3 weeks. So stick around for that because I'm definitely going to be humble about it when we get there. So let's do some pump the brakes.
Yeah, well, let's jump into it here. Tyreek Hill should be the next MVP if he hits 2,000 yards.
Okay, with the yeah, it's not even a pump the brakes. Like I think if a guy hits 2,000 receiving yards, MVP. Like it's time. It's ridiculous that a receiver doesn't already have one. I think there's got to have been a case somewhere over the years. Like Jerry Rice should have won an MVP probably somewhere along the way. Like if we're being fully honest, Randy Moss had his years, right? Antonio Brown had a couple crazy years. I think if Tyreek Hill gets 2,000 receiving yards in the weak MVP class that we currently are looking at, yes. Yeah. Now, if one of those contender teams we talked about in part one that are like pushing for that wild card spot, or maybe we're looking at Lamar or Patty and like a drive to the 1 seed, any of those quarterbacks can string 6 great weeks of football down the stretch here. It won't matter. Like, it's going to be whoever does that. The recency bias will run us into the postseason. And at that point, it's just going to be if a quarterback has a case going into the postseason, and it's not a postseason award, but we do it right before the Super Bowl, so the postseason does play into our decision-making a lot of the time, it's going to be a quarterback. But all indicators given, 2,000 receiving yards, give the cheetah the MVP. And maybe Patrick Mahomes did need him. I'm not going to go that far. But it's I wouldn't say it's leaning that way. But
he's got to go out and average 104 for the rest of the season to hit the 2K marker. And there is a little bit of a caveat of like, hey, he does have the extra game there in comparison to these other receivers. But if there was ever a year, I agree with you, to make it not a quarterback, it's this year.
Yeah, I agree.
Dak Prescott and the Brock Purdy talk is
kill me.
Dak is like, I get the Dak argument because he is having his best season, but like just because it's a down year and he's the best available choice doesn't mean he should be the choice, right?
Yeah, I'm upset with the over. Like you compare these MVPs, our current favorites, right? You listed 2. Let's toss Lamar and Jalen in because I've heard a lot about Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson.
I think that's the top 5. I'll double check but continue your point.
When you look at those guys' numbers against MVPs of the past, you're like, this is fucking piss poor. I thought this was an air raid league. These guys, because not even when you add the rushing stats in, does Lamar or Jalen look that much more spectacular. And there are caveats for everyone's case, right? Lamar doesn't have a lot of touchdowns. Well, Gus Edwards has 10 in 10 weeks, all right? Like, there is a better option inside the 5-yard line than Lamar Jackson, and I'm perfectly okay with that for my quarterback's health. There's a reason he's playing in Week 11. It's because I'm not relying on him to be 70% of my offense, right?
Okay.
Brock Purdy.
You ready for the top 5 real quick?
Yeah, bring me the 5, yeah.
So Dak and Brock are both tied at plus 300 to win MVP. Jalen Hurts is number 3 at plus 350. Patrick Mahomes is number 4 at plus 650. Tua is number 5 at plus 950. Lamar is 6 at plus 950. Tyreek is 6th at plus 1,500.
I might throw 5 on Tyreek Hill, truthfully. Like, you might get a decent return out of that. Like
$10 wins you $1,500 on that bet, and it has to be the year. Like, if TJ Watt was having the season he had last season, he's probably the MVP.
100%. Right? It's because
Myles Garrett didn't hit a mid-season slump. He probably is also the MVP this year.
Welcome to the NFL. If you don't throw a football or sack the guy that does throw a football, I don't really fucking care about you. Welcome to NFL award season. Yeah. That's what this feels like because I 110% agree with you. Hell, I think Trayvon Diggs has 11 picks this year. We talk about it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'd be shocked if Deron Bland doesn't have 2 pick sixes in one game towards the end of the year, and they're like, maybe he's MVP. I don't know. They're going to do whatever they can to discredit anybody who actually deserves it, right? The quarterbacks, the case just isn't there, right? Like Lamar and Jalen's numbers are down. Brock has his all-star cast. Hey, I don't want to be the guy that just always pokes and takes down the Cowboys, but he's having a career year against probably the easiest schedule in the NFL up to this point, outside of their division and playing the Niners once.
He's not even going to throw for 4,500 yards, right? Like
The fact that we would have an MVP quarterback that was under 45, because I'm sure a lot of them are projecting close to that.
if he averages 300, he would be he'd be over if he averaged 300 yards, because he'd be at 35, 38, 41, 44, 47. So
That's not terrible.
it's not terrible, right? He's at 3,200 right now. He's 5th in yards right now. The leader is currently CJ Stroud, Sam Howell, Tua, Jarrett, and then Dak. The biggest argument, I do want to jump back to Brock Purdy for a second.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest, I'm a Nick Wright guy. He has the best argument against Brock Purdy for MVP, and I couldn't agree more with it. His saying is, we can't vote a guy MVP when he's not even the MVP of his own team. Because if you sat here and said to say, okay, who is the MVP of the 49ers, you would put both Christian McCaffrey and probably Debo before you said Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
So it's really, really, really tough to sit here and go, well, Brock Purdy deserves to be in the conversation. I mean, there were people were talking about maybe benching him in the middle of the season. I know I was on that train of like,
yeah,
he was bad.
This is a rough 3-game stretch they had.
Yeah, he cannot be in the MVP conversation. He just can't, like, in my opinion.
Again, I think my opinion on his MVP conversation has not changed since we talked about it in probably week 4 or 5 when they were undefeated. And you're like, oh shit,
it wasn't that long ago. It was, yeah, but I know
because we talked about him twice we talked about him for being MVP once, and then we talked about him when he got hurt and they were on a 3-game skid.
Yeah.
And the first time, remember, or maybe it wasn't that long ago, he has to have astronomical numbers. He cannot have run-of-the-mill, pretty good numbers and get it. Like, he is going to have to probably throw for like 5,000 or 35, 40 TDs, and he's not going to do either of those things this year. So I think that's where his case ends. Nobody else is blowing it statistically at all, especially at quarterbacks. Like, even Lamar, when you add the rush yards, Jalen's rush yards, if you want to count Jalen's 11 tush pushes as rushing touchdowns fully, like, there's just not a case. And I think Tyreek Hill at 2K is not only the case, I think it's the winner, in my opinion. It should be.
And you look at it, if they're the number 1 seed and he hits that mark, like, it just is crazy to me that he wouldn't even be in the conversation. Like, it's just madness to me. But I don't know. That's the NFL we kind of live in, where it's, the best quarterback on the best team gets it. And
I mean, Tua might be the one that steals it from him. Like, truthfully, it could be his quarterback.
Easy. And you could almost make the same argument for Tua. If you said MVP for the Dolphins, you'd probably say Tyreek and then maybe Tua.
I would say so, yeah.
So, yeah, just not a big fan of that thought, but
no,
I had to be talked about. Jordan Love, the next pump the brakes I got here. Jordan Love is the next great QB in Green Bay.
Man.
He looked tough. He was going against Patrick Mahomes and he looked unfazed.
The part I'm debating is the great part. Because when I hear the next great Packers quarterback, I'm like, okay, you're calling the first 2 great. He has to meet or exceed those expectations. So that's tough. Now, if you're saying, go ahead.
Let's define great for a second. He doesn't have to be a first ballot Hall of Famer to be the next great quarterback. Let's put him in the Matt Ryan category, right? Maybe he never wins the Super Bowl. Maybe he has like 1 year where he wins an MVP. You know what I mean? But he's never the best quarterback in the league, but he's always in that top 5 conversation.
Yeah, I think, again, the moment of doubt was, because, again, the way that it's worded, I think, okay, I'm comparing him to the last 2 guys. He's not going to get there, most likely. That's, for them to have 3 of those guys back-to-back, and still, I guess currently, it depends on what Jordan Love does, to have 2 Super Bowls to their name would be asinine. As far as him becoming a franchise quarterback in this league,
Mm-hmm.
I think he's there, right? Like, I mean, everybody was giving up on him, and they're like, well, actually, if you look at him and Aaron Rodgers through this amount of games, it's identical. And I have seen not only those numbers come closer together to what Rodgers was year one. Again, it's a gutsy win against Kansas City, and he
He
did
looked
it
good.
again. He did it again the week before. He did it on primetime Thanksgiving against the Lions, one of the biggest games of the year, if not their biggest. Truthfully, he said, "Oh, Aaron Rodgers isn't here. We might still own the Bears. Do we still own Detroit? You're goddamn right they do. He fucking proved it on Thanksgiving. Like that was a huge win over the division leader. So, yes, the way that you're wording it, yeah, I do think he's the next Packers great quarterback. I don't
Yeah.
think he can match Rodgers and Favre just because to expect that out of someone is just
It's a tough
nuts.
bar, right? But like,
You can't label that on anybody.
I think there was too much expectation coming into the season of what I was going to see out of Jordan Love, and I think that
I
starts with
agree.
me, right? Like, I think
Starts
when
with
you look,
all of us who had those thoughts.
yeah, if you look at it from like, hey, this is this guy's rookie year, right? Because this is the first full season he's really getting to play.
Mhm.
He's done everything you asked out of him. He's getting better as the season goes on. He's getting more in rhythm, and they're asking him to do more, right? Like, if you were to say, okay, if we were counting this as his rookie season, I think it could be a close argument between him and CJ Stroud. Maybe not close. It's an argument. You know what I mean? If somebody was like, I think Jordan Love could be in that talk, like, I don't think
For
that's
rookie of the
crazy
year.
to say. Yeah, rookie of the year. Like, I don't think that's crazy.
I think by the end of the year, I don't think it'll be crazy. I think right now it might be because Jordan Love did start so slow, and CJ Stroud's just been red hot for
Yeah.
up until, like not red hot the last 2 weeks, but they had their 4 week stretch where they were just unbeatable almost. But I think come week 18, I think like if
Well,
you had looped him into this rookie class, I think you do have a compelling argument, truthfully.
let's say this situation: Green Bay makes the playoff, Houston misses it. Like that, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like that's a possible outcome, and I think
Yeah.
that makes maybe the conversation a little bit more interesting. I want to say Jordan Love he's top 10 in the league in passing. I could be dead wrong
He
there.
was ninth at one point, but that was a while back when I was
He's down.
looking.
He's down to 13. He's
Okay,
fallen
still
behind a little bit.
close. I mean, top half.
Yeah, he's probably gonna throw for around over 3,000 yards, which this year's a good year. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it is. That's better than league average, truthfully, this year at
Yeah,
35.
like 35 is gonna be. You know what I mean?
30,
That's gonna
35 is
be
going to feel like 45 this year.
that's a top half year for him. Like that's just good is the only way I know how to do it. You know what I mean? Like that's I think he's a good year. I've been a little too up and down on him, but I think he's better than I want to give him credit for.
Well, tell you what, brother, I don't think the under is going to hit on our game tonight.
No, is it bad?
No, it is. You guys are up 21-10, but I mean, I can't take another field goal, and it's not even halftime yet. So, man, the under in the Patriots Pittsburgh
Oh,
game
it's already
sells me.
over. It's already 31.
I got it at 34.5. I
Oh, that's
altered
right.
it.
Yeah.
But again, a field goal breaks it.
Oh
So,
man,
or
Bailey
no.
Zappi threw 3 touchdowns. That's not good.
Oh shit! No more Drake May. Bailey Zappi's the answer.
Yeah, this is exactly what I was worried about. Bailey Zappi falling out 3 games, and all of a sudden the talks are gonna switch.
They're like, let's take a tackle at 3. We'll take a quarterback. We'll take Bo Nix in the second.
Second, yeah.
Blow your brains out.
All right, I want to talk about this one quickly. Now that the Eagles lost pretty badly to the 49ers, now we can be worried about the Eagles.
True. Can we be worried about the Eagles after that loss?
Yeah, I mean they're still the 1 seed in the NFC. They still only have 2 losses to San Francisco's 3. Obviously, if they were tied, now the tiebreaker would then go to San Francisco. They have a couple of tough games left. They have the Cowboys and then the Seahawks is their next toughest matchup. Then they go Giants, Cardinals, Giants. So
I'm
gonna finish out the year probably pretty strong.
I'm not worried about the Eagles. As far as Super Bowl regular season, winning the division, winning the AFC, I'm not. Now they lose this week against Dallas, right? Which they're not favored. I don't want to talk about a ton about that game because I will talk about it in our bet section. But if they lose this week, then I'm worried, right? I mean, that's a division loss at that point. It's two back-to-back losses. Essentially, what most likely happened is San Francisco beat them twice. They're so distraught about getting dog walked by San Francisco. You have to take your ego out of it and realize that San Francisco might be one of the best rosters ever assembled. Just plain and simple, deep
It's a good
at
team.
every position, playmakers, Pro Bowlers, All Pro, you name it. Pick 264 in the draft is captaining this team back to an NFC title game probably this year. Like, it is what it is when it comes to the Niners. All right. Worry about them later. You lost, move on, secure the win against Dallas, get into the cake part of your schedule, roll in as the 1 seed, and take care of business at home. That's all the Philadelphia Eagles have to do. But if they lose this week, I might start hitting the panic button a bit.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's not like they just beat the Chiefs the week before, right? So it's
Yeah.
hard to sit here and be in like a complete panic and be like, "Oh, we got to sell all of our stock on this team and completely give up." I think that's a bit too dramatic at this point. Um, but it was concerning the way they lost to San Francisco, right? Um, and yeah, I agree with you. I think if they lose this week, I'm really nervous because then it first off, like not only are they not first in the NFC, it might flip them down to a wild card team.
Yeah.
Dallas could take over the division and be a top 4 team. So that's just insane to me. Like
Yeah.
that would be worst case for the Eagles, but the NFC is just an interesting race. I think San Francisco's starting to scare me with how much they're running away with that division at this point.
I mean, they look so dominant.
Yeah.
There's not been a game, truthfully, outside of that 3-game stretch where it's looked close. Not only have they won every game, it feels like they have smoked their way to a victory
Yeah.
in their, what, 7 or 8 that they have. So,
All right. The New Orleans Saints should clean house this offseason.
talking front office, coaching staff,
Talking
roster.
GM, I'm talking Dennis Allen, and I'm talking Derek Carr.
Yeah, I think it's time. I mean, sell off what pieces you can. I don't think it needs to be a super long rebuild. I think they've got a couple pieces on offense. The defense is old, but if you're smart, and I think it would have been smart to do it last offseason, fire both guys up front with Dennis Allen. See if somebody wants Derek Carr for a second or third round pick. Draft a quarterback in the first round. Trade Michael Thomas. Trade Cameron Jordan. Trade Ryan Ramczyk if you can do it with being financially conscious. And I completely lied. It is going to be a long rebuild. Let's be 100% honest. These cap savings, whatever the hell you've been Black Friday door deals you've been pulling the last 7 years are going to haunt you. And I think we're coming to it because this is a team that didn't sacrifice all their picks, but sacrificed financial freedom, like the Rams sacrificed their draft class to get Stafford. The Rams won a ring. The Saints haven't sniffed an NFC title game even. Maybe not even a division title, truthfully, especially with Tom Brady rolling into town. So they're going to have to atone for their financial sins at some point. And I think this reset is probably going to be what's it. You're going to have to bring somebody in. And I don't know who's going to want that job. I think they're hiring from within for a year or so because
It is weird for that team, right? Like I think you've got to rock if you could trade Derek Carr and maybe eat a little bit of the money and somebody just picks up the rest of it. I could see something like that being somewhat viable. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Otherwise, I just think you're in a world of trouble when it comes to that.
the money
Just
is fucked.
like if you look at their top 5 highest paid guys, they're all old and they're all expensive.
Yeah.
You have Cam Jordan at 34, Ryan Ramczyk at 29, you have Andres Pete at 30, Alvin Kamara at 28, and Demario Davis at 34. Just not the situation you necessarily want to be in. Um, Taysom Hill is the 7th highest paid player on that team, and he is like
Tight
a
end.
tight end rotational piece, whatever you want to call him.
He's
They're
Taysom Hill without Sean Payton. He's fucking nothing
nothing.
essentially.
Yeah, well, he's been pretty good the last couple weeks, actually. Believe it or
Fair.
not. Um, but yeah, they're just in a really, really, really bad spot. And if they stay on the carousel that they're on now, they're not going to get a chance to take a quarterback, right?
They're
I
going to
want to
be
say,
mediocre for another 10 years if they
yeah,
don't.
uh,
You have to reset at some point, right? Like take a page out of your old division rival David Tepper's playbook and hit the reset button, right?
yeah,
Because Tepper's problem is he resets too often, right? Reset. All right, we're almost done with level 2 of your building. All right, reset it. I don't like how this is looking so far. All right, sir, we put the first brick down. Reset it. I don't care. The Saints are like, we built a cracked foundation 3 years ago, and we've built a 14-story mansion on it. And we could possibly fix the foundation without destroying the house. But we could also just kill everyone inside. I think we're going to risk it. We're just going to go for it and keep building up on this horrid foundation that we have. And that's where they're going to be at.
yeah. I think they've got to do some looking and really think internally, like, hey, how are we going to fix this? What are we going to do to turn this around?
Yeah. Because I ain't looking pretty.
All right, well, cool. Um, I think we've talked enough about the Bengals. I'm going to skip that one.
Okay.
Sam Howell. I want to give Sam Howell some love here. If there was a most improved NFL player award, I feel like he'd probably win it this year. The dude has kind of been balling. Um, I don't feel like he's getting enough love for how well he's actually played so far this year. He's second in total yards, 3,466 yards. He's thrown for 18 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, right? Like, not exactly the numbers you want to look. But again, if you view it from the eyes of a rookie QB, because he played, what, 4 games at the end of that?
Yeah, not a ton.
Not a half, less than half a season for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, really seen good improvement, and I think he could be the guy. And even if Washington fires their coach, which we
They
both
should.
think will happen, I think this is a job you look at it and say, hey, who can we get in to pair with Sam Howell? Who can we help grow and develop Sam Howell? I think he's really becoming a cornerstone of that organization. I think he has a really good upside this year.
I agree. If they can get a solid O line in front of him and another playmaker in the offense, I think you can run rotational backs with Brian Robinson Jr. and whoever. If it's Antonio Gibson or somebody bring in, right? Bring in fucking Latavius Murray. He's always good for 600 a year, right?
Yeah.
Fucking put an offensive line in front of this kid, Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel on roster already, right? We get another weapon in there, man, and a good O line. Fuck Sammy Sosa, as Chase Young liked to call him. Put somebody back there with Sam Howell, man. Like the pressure is definitely on the front office and the ownership in Washington because if you don't get this head coach pick right, if you fail and put the wrong guy in charge and he's out in a year or less than 2 years time, Sam Howell's production is and growth is probably effed at that point, right? We've seen that messes with guys' development when they're like new coach here, new coach there, right? Mac Jones, 3 offensive coordinators in 3 years. Justin Fields, 3 head coaches in 3 years, right? It messes with young guys when you don't have that stability. Look at the younger guys with a bit of stability. Little rough sailing for Trevor Lawrence to start, but steady improvement since Doug Peterson came along, right? Jordan Love, he's had the same head coach his whole career. He's coming into his first year as a starter, turning it around pretty well in the second half of the season. You have to have confidence in your guy, and that has to go both ways, right? And I think they have got to nail this head coach hire, or they're in trouble.
Yeah, and
And it's going to put Sam Howell in jeopardy.
and this is wild to say out loud, but I think the Washington job would be a really attractive a job for, you know what I mean, some of these higher coveted like if you're Ben Johnson, you got to really give that a long thought and think about it for sure,
Depends
right? Like,
on what all comes open. They
yeah,
also may have the answer in house, right? Eric Bieniemy's the offensive coordinator there. This might be the shot that he came on to be the OC for. Knew that if this goes south, man, Ron Rivera's out. His job's wide open. I'll have a
it's
year in the building already.
it's so interesting. Sorry, I had a little chicken hair there for a second. It's really interesting, right? Because the team is bad, but the offense has been somewhat good, right? So, do you keep Eric Bieniemy, or does Eric Bieniemy get a job because of how well Sam Howell's played? I think is a really interesting concept for sure.
And how much of Sam Howell's success is because of Bieniemy, right? Like
It's true.
Bieniemy may have been the growth in this kid, and I think this is exactly how NFL teams should try to play this. I think, truthfully, because you can really miss a lot with swinging at Ben Johnson, right? But if you can get, and it's very rare, but Kellen Moore and Eric Bieniemy, top OCs, can't land a head coach job, go somewhere that's about to get their head coach fired. Let them can Staley, let them can Rivera, move straight up into the head coach job, and there you are. You have yourself, a top offensive coach, and you didn't have to go in a bidding war. And he already has been in the system for a year. He's been there for a year, so
Yeah.
I think it's very curious to see how Bieniemy is going to play out. And I do love me some good Sam Howell action.
Yeah, I think he's been better than I think I realized and wanted to give him credit for.
Better
So
than anybody's giving him credit for, truthfully.
yeah, I just think it's the bad team. So I wanted to, needed to show a little Sam Howell love today. All right. Well, are you ready to jump into your bets, my friend?
I am 110% ready to jump to these bits.
Okay. I'll tee you up here. Decent week for me. I went 2-1. Puts me.
What happens if I'm a problem gambler?
Oh shoot! I totally skipped that. Wow.
That is the first time you've ever forgot to read that before.
And how I've done
And I'll tell you what, this
50
hot
episodes.
streak, yeah, this hot streak I'm on, I need you to read me that number.
I need you to read me that.
I'm developing a problem quickly.
Jeez Louise. If you or anyone you know is struggling with a gambling addiction, contact the Problem Gambling Helpline at 800-522-4700. Professionals are available 24 hours a day to take your call. Help is available at no cost to the problem gambler or their concerned others. All right. Now that we've read that, let's jump into this.
Let's go.
2-1, not a bad week for me. I'm
Pretty solid.
trying to pull myself back up to 500. Took a lot of work to get there. I kind of dug a little bit of a hole, but I'm starting to get a feel for it. This early part of the season was just tough for me to kind of figure it all out.
Yeah.
I have Falcons -1.5 versus the Jets. That hit. I had the Broncos +3.5 versus the Texans. Thought that game was going to be closer. It was a 5-point game instead of a 3.5-point game. So it was one of those ones that it was tight.
Tight,
The Falcons game was also very tight. Cardinals +5.5. Cardinals won straight out.
Hell
I
yeah.
knew the Cardinals were playing better than a lot of people were giving them credit for. 2-1, not a bad week for me.
Yeah, for me, another 3-0 week, 9-0 in the last three. I actually put money on it and won for the first time this week. That was electric. I just tossed a Tyreek Hill touchdown in there. I knew that was going to happen in this Washington game. I had them -9.5, Miami 9.5 versus Washington. They blew them out of the water. I mean, it was a 2-score win, I'm pretty sure. San Francisco -2.5 versus Philly. I mean, it felt like a pick 'em, right? I mean, those were the top two NFC teams, and it was just kind of who you felt was going to win. Got San Fran in there at -2.5 over Philly, and then Detroit -4.5 versus New Orleans again. Derek Carr and the Saints haven't been able to figure it out. The Lions have been rolling outside of a couple. They've all been quality losses. They lost to Baltimore, right? They also lost to a surging Green Bay team, and then Detroit lost to. There's one other quality loss that they've had recently. I think it
They
was.
Was it?
Was it Philly or
I don't know.
San Fran? I don't
Good
know. I
question.
thought it was a pretty quality loss from what I remember. Anyways, Detroit played well against New Orleans last week. Secures another 3-0. 23-9-1 on the year. I'm not going to tell you to hammer the picks because the second I do, I'm going to go 0-3. So take them with a grain of salt, but I'll run you through what I have so far this week. All right. And I do like a couple of Tim's picks as well. So I'm going to start it off. Detroit -3 versus Chicago. Come on now. What are we talking about? Should be the lock of the century. This is probably the game that loses me all my money, but it is what it is. Actually, I think the Thursday night football game is currently doing that for me by scoring more than 35 points. So, give me Detroit -3 versus Chicago. I don't care if it's on the road. This team is looking to stack wins, keep the Packers off their back in the division race. This division win will do a lot for it. Baltimore and the Los Angeles Rams over 40.5. This one, honestly, a little trickier. I think the Rams' creativity on offense is going to net them a good 15 to 17, maybe even a 21 spot against a good Baltimore defense. But I also don't see Baltimore losing, right? So if I'm expecting 2 to 3 touchdowns, I think Lamar Jackson, the boys get it in one extra time and can get this over 40 and a half. I do agree. I think you said it when we were off the air. Could be a 17-10 game. This could be a
This
stinker.
this is the I like your bet. Like I don't hate it, but these teams have just been weird. Like
They've
that's
been
the only
inconsistent.
they've
Yeah,
been so up or down. So this could be this could be a 30 to 32 type game. It also could be like a 17 to 3 game. Like it just has
true.
been that kind of season for both these teams.
Baltimore's
Uh,
coming off a bye too. I mean, that
yes, which is
doesn't
good.
super bode well for the Rams. But again, I think McVay also, and I think it was Mike Tomlin. There's somebody on the Steelers sideline pointed out when they beat us 17-10 earlier on in the year. Like, when the game's on the line, they're going to try to burn the house down. And if you are ready for it, you'll beat them every time. You
Yeah.
cannot stop guys down the field on a cover zero blitz. And if the game is that close, that's what Baltimore's going to do, right? And I think some early third and shorts, fourth and shorts might be some big plays for the Rams.
Yeah.
Get them into scoring position. So I have them over 40 and a half. And here's the pick of the week. Probably the one I am as
Making
confident
it the
about.
pick of the week and not as confident
Not
about.
as confident about.
Interesting.
I mean, the
Little
lock of the week is
strategy here.
Detroit. Detroit -3 is the lock. The pick just because I feel sound in reasoning. And again, I apologize to the Dallas Cowboys fans out there. No diss to you. If you guys win and spoil it, fine. I'm okay with you guys being happy. I'll take a loss. Haven't taken one in 3 weeks in this segment. So I have Philly +3.5, or is it +3? +3.5 versus
Yeah, it's
Dallas in
three
the
and a
hook.
half. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I like having the hook on there, right? A game-winning field goal in a tie game. I still cash this out. Um, this to me feels like two teams that need this win, right? It's not must win by any make the playoffs or lose the scenario, but it is for pride. This is do or die. I mean, this is as must win as it gets. Division rivals. The division is still up in the air, and not only is the division up in the air, the one seed is up in the air, right? These two teams want it. The Cowboys want it, right? Dak Prescott, they have not beat a team with a winning record yet this year. I still believe that stat is currently active. They need a big prove it win over a division team, and what better one to get than the one that brings Dallas home playoff games?
They beat Seattle at
They
the
beat
time,
Seattle.
had a winning record, but the loss put them at like six
Did
and
they put them
six.
at 6-7 or
Yeah,
6-6?
it's 6-6 or something like that. So yeah,
Yeah,
technically they beat Seattle. It's the first one that they beat with a winning record, but that game, that honestly, if that game is not circled, like that is one of the games of the week for sure to just watch in general.
yeah, you got to sit down and watch that one.
Yeah, I
Those two
do like
teams want it. Good.
I do like the Philly bounce back story. I think there's some legitimacy to that. Because yeah, and the other thing I forgot to mention last week, us taking that week break threw me off. 49ers were coming off a bye against Philly. So I will say, like, there is some of that going. Like, you give Kyle Shan two
Two
weeks to prep
weeks.
for that game. It kind of feels like why it's so easy to overreact to it. Be like, oh my god, they blew them out. Oh, it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
give Kyle Shanahan 2 weeks, he's gonna carve up any defense.
Yeah,
So
and again, it's the Niners. Like, it's a talented team. It's not like they got carved up. Like, Detroit would have been surprising because I'm like,
mhm,
good offense, but not. I
not
mean,
great.
yeah, not tear the Philadelphia Eagles up off.
Yeah.
Great. But again, Dak's playing for an MVP. I think Philly's looking across. Everyone in America thinks you just lost the NFC, right? They're thinking that's the NFC title game. I just saw it, and it's not pretty for the boys in green. Well, you have to come out here and you got to defend home turf. It can't spread to your division because you lose this game. Not only did you lose the NFC title game, you may have lost the 1 seed. You may lose this division. You're going to be playing the 5 seed, and you're going to be going on the road, right? And we all know, to me, what this game comes down to is turnover differential. Who is not going to shoot themselves in the foot, right? Who is going to play smart football, convert 404 times on touchdowns, take the one turnover they get and turn it into points? If I had to bet on a team not shooting themselves in the foot, I would never bet on the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, they are their own worst enemy. They always are, right? And I hope the story changes for all the Cowboys fans. Okay, if I go 2-1 this week and this is the one loss, I'm happy for you. All right, but history tells me this. I'm riding hot. It feels like the pick gave me the Eagles plus 3.5 versus Dallas.
Yeah, yeah. No, I like a lot of those picks. For my kind of game that I'm going to watch this week that I'm really excited for, Bills plus 1.5 versus the Chiefs, and
I see mirroring storylines somewhat here between.
yeah, like very similar for the Bills. This could be a loss that keeps you out of the playoffs, right? Like they are fighting for their playoff life here.
Uh huh.
Um, and at the same time, the Chiefs are trying to get back to the top of the AFC. So the Chiefs can't afford a loss. The Bills can't afford a loss. This is going to be a game where Andy Reid might put a lot of eggs out there, and you better believe Buffalo is going to do everything in their power to win this game, right?
Yeah.
This is a game that they win and they come out of, and people are like, "We were counting the Bills out at 6-6. Now they're 7-6, and they just beat the Chiefs. They could beat anybody at this point, right?"
Yeah.
So
The Bills could go in as the sixth seed and make the AFC title game and win it.
and I
Truthfully, they get hot.
Yeah, and I know we just talked down the Bills' playoff opportunities, right? We said it's going to be hard, it's going to be tough. I just think this game's a shootout, and it's going to be close. This is one
And
of
this
those
is the game
games.
that's part of it.
Yeah,
Like, this is why it's such a grim playoff schedule. If this is a win, they
it
might
could
be
turn it
in.
around. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
So I just like it when it's going to be a close game. You have two teams that prove it. I look at this as okay, very similar talent level teams. Who's got more to lose here? And that would be Buffalo in a game like
True.
this, right? If somebody
True.
was going to come out and say, "Hey, all those trick plays we were saving for the playoffs, screw it. Let's bust them out. Let's get it going. Let's whatever we got to do, whatever special play we didn't want to put on tape, we got to put it on tape to make sure we get that opportunity to not want to have it on tape, right? Like,
Tell you what I'm looking at. Hell of a week for Gabe Davis to have his 200-yard game would be this game right here.
yeah,
They need that spark. And if he pulls up, might be trouble in Kansas City.
and this is crazy to say, but I do think Buffalo has more talent than Kansas City as of right now, right? Like, if we were to list offensive weapons, I think I'd
You're
take
saying just on offense?
just on offense. I mean,
Oh
if we
yeah.
include defense, it's a little bit more interesting.
I would
Buffalo's kind of
lean
hurt on
towards
defense, but
yeah, I would lean towards KC with the defense, but offensively.
yeah, if we take out quarterbacks and we say offensive weapons, I think I'd take. I mean, I'm taking Stephon Diggs over everybody. Probably taking Gabe Davis over everybody on the Chiefs, and I
Everybody
might
that's not Kelsey, yeah.
yeah, and and when it comes down to there, I'm probably taking Dalton Kincaid over anybody on the Chiefs, like as my third pick. So it's just one of those games. If there was a game that they were going to come out and swing, it's this one.
Yeah. And I think the big actual X factor of that game, Chiefs defense. Time to show up, right? Like playing like a top 5 unit. They're honestly the reason that they're 8-4 has been that defense, right? They've been playing
Yeah,
some lights out football. You wanna earn that title of being one of the best defenses in the NFL. This is your prove it game, right?
yeah,
You
this
go
is
out
your
there and
shot.
shut Josh Allen down, man, and bounce them from playoff contention. In essence, it's a
Yeah,
pretty damn good story to back up the title of being the best defense in the league.
might not be the nail in the coffin yet, but it is. It hurts. It's they're
Yeah,
gonna.
every loss at this point is just another 2 shovels down towards 6 feet.
Yeah, and then I like the Texans minus 3.5 versus the Jets. Now you know that we hate betting over the field goal, right? Like
Yeah.
I hate the 3.5 lines. Typically not something I would bet. The Jets have been such a disaster between the Zach Wilson story coming out that he doesn't want to play, him denying it, Robert Saleh denying it, Aaron Rodgers calling the people who reported that a shit show in the Jets organization. That place has been a chaotic mess, and that is the last thing you want to be is distracted and be a mess when you're going to play a really good team like the Texans, right? So I still think it's a low scoring game. I just like the Texans by a touchdown. Like this is a game I would have thought about if it was minus 5.5. I really would have,
Yeah,
just because I like the Texans that much more,
I
especially
do.
with the mess going around in the Jets. So I'm willing to eat the field goal over a field goal here for me, just because I like it a little bit better.
Yeah, and I mentioned that to somebody at work, and I was like, Texans minus. And again, remember, I bet him at 5.5. I
Yeah.
did before the line went down. I bet him at 5.5. And I was like, Texans at 3.5 is easy. He's like, I don't know, man. Jets defense is stingy. I was like, yeah, but the Jets aren't scoring fucking 21. And I think CJ Stroud can get that done pretty handedly. Jets defense is good, but dude, bad does not describe how their quarterback situation has been.
Yeah.
And that's not even getting into the media, everything you just mentioned. Just the product on the field from their quarterback room, probably the worst in the league for the whole year.
If people are talking about your QB in the media and it's not about an MVP race or making the playoffs, bad news. Like it's not.
And that quarterback hasn't started in 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's not going to be good. I just
No,
don't like it one bit.
no.
My last pick is going to be the Falcons minus 2.5 versus the Buccaneers. Back, baby. I'm back to
They
betting on
cashed one for you last week. You're like, all right, fuck it, you talked me into it.
We're back in it. This could be a separation game for them inside that division, right? The
True,
Bucks are
yeah.
on their heels, the Saints are on their heels. Like there's a game separating this division. Of course, we knew it was going to come down to like this.
Yeah.
And the Falcons again have looked overall a little bit better than the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers struggled to beat Carolina last week, right? Like it's taken a lot for them to come out and win games. And Atlanta is like Arthur Smith understands he's coaching for his job this year, right? Like they've got to have high production. So I just like the Falcons again. Could be a game they win it by a field goal. It's minus 2.5. So I'll eat that line all day of the week. So those are my 3 picks for the week.
I like him. Yeah, I think if you can get, a combination of 4 of our 6 picks in, like the Texans and Detroit ones, I think feel pretty solid blocks. Take your pick on 2 of the next 4, and you got yourself a nice little 5 for 54 legger rocking this weekend.
Oh, God.
So, that's what I hit last week. It was my specialty. Again, I think Patriots and the Steelers are going to ruin both of my bets. There was my issue. I told myself don't put 2 together and can't put the same outcome in 2 parlays. Well, I was like, hey, lock of the week is this game tonight. And guess what? Fucking game's about to break both of my parlays before I even get to Sunday.
It ain't that game. That's for damn sure.
That's okay. That means I can just go replace all of them without the Patriots Steelers game on there. I'll be fine.
Back.
What was that phone number again, actually? I might need that.
Right. Jeez.
Oh, fuck. Well, that's going to do it for part 2 of episode 16. If you guys made it all this way, man, fucking go see a mental health psychiatrist. What are you torturing yourself with for an hour and a half a week? I couldn't tell you. Unless you're just riding with my bets, then I expect a donation towards the show at the end of the year.
At this point.
Yeah. If you're making that much money off of me, if you've bet on my picks for more than a week, you've made more money than I have on them. So I expect competition. Hook me up. This guy's getting a little power hungry at the end of episode 16.
Yeah,
but
dang, holy cow.
All right. I'm just getting in a good mood. I love talking about football. I'm sad that we're done for the week, but we'll be back for episode 17. All right. Don't you folks worry. All right. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you guys next week for episode 17.